I never thought I'd be the one telling this story. But here we are. You know how they say there are two sides to every story? Well, this one is mine. I'm Chloe. I'm 28 years old, and looking back at it all now, I honestly don't know whether to laugh or to cry. Let's go back. Picture it. A local pub, the Crow's Nest, about 4 years ago. It was their weekly quiz night. My friend, Jessica, had dragged me there. She insisted I needed to get out more after my last relationship imploded. And that's where I saw him. Samuel. He wasn't handsome. Not in the way you see in movies or on the covers of magazines. He had this crooked smile that pulled up higher on one side. His ears stuck out just a little too much. And his body? Well, let's just say he wasn't winning any fitness competitions. He had what people lovingly, or maybe mockingly, call a dad bod before he was even a dad. But there was something about him. Maybe it was the way he made his entire table erupt in laughter without seeming to try, or how he wasn't scanning the room, desperate to impress anyone. He was just himself. It was different. The guys I usually dated were all about posting their gym selfies on Instagram or humble bragging about their job promotions in finance. They were a performance. Sam was 34. He worked as a postman for the Royal Mail. Not exactly the dream career I had envisioned for a future husband, but when he talked about it, he had this way of making it sound like the most fascinating job in the world. He'd tell these hilarious stories about the people on his route, the dogs that chased him, the strange packages he delivered. He'd do all the voices, his face lighting up. I found myself leaning in, hanging on every word, looking forward to his stories, even the ones I was pretty sure he'd told before. So we started dating, and it was nice. Different, but nice. Our idea of a perfect night was ordering a pizza and playing a board game. Monopoly was his favorite. He'd always let me win, making some clumsy, obvious mistake right when I was about to go bankrupt. I pretended not to notice. Sometimes, we'd spend entire weekends binge-watching some crime drama, and he'd make these ridiculously spot-on predictions about who the killer was. I'll admit, I wasn't always completely honest with him. Little things, you know? When he'd ask about my past boyfriends, I'd make them sound a little worse than they were. More controlling. More selfish. It made him feel like a hero, I think. When he'd notice a new dress, I'd just wave my hand and say, "Oh, this? I've had it for ages." Small lies. White lies. The kind you tell to make life smoother. Nothing serious. The proposal wasn't some grand romantic gesture. There was no flash mob. No candlelit dinner at a fancy restaurant. He asked me during one of our game nights. He had hidden the ring inside the Monopoly box, right where the little silver dog token should have been. At first, a part of me was, disappointed. It wasn't the story I dreamed of telling my friends. But then I looked at his hopeful, crooked smile, and I convinced myself it was perfect. Because it was so us. I didn't tell him I'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting a proposal with a city skyline view. I just said yes. The wedding planning, that's when things started to get complicated. I had this vision, you see, a perfect day, flowing white dress, a beautiful historic venue, a string quartet. But Sam kept talking about budgets, about being practical. He didn't seem to understand that this was supposed to be the one day a woman gets to have her dream. So, I got creative with the finances. I opened a new credit card, maybe 2. It wasn't a big deal, I told myself. It was an investment in our memories. We'd figure it out later. The wedding was smaller than I wanted. We had it at a nice, but not spectacular, hotel ballroom. I told everyone we chose something more intimate because we were saving for a house deposit. That wasn't exactly true, but it sounded better than admitting my husband's postman's salary couldn't support the wedding I'd been planning on Pinterest since I was 16. Looking back, I guess the warning signs were there. The way I'd get defensive when he'd ask about the shopping bags in the trunk of my car, or how I'd quickly delete the online purchase confirmation emails before he could see them. But at the time, it just seemed easier than having another lecture about budgeting, about living within our means. Don't get me wrong, we were happy. Mostly. Sam had this way of making me laugh, even when I was furious with him. And yes, sometimes, I'd catch myself wishing he dressed a little better. Or maybe hit the gym. But then he'd do something sweet, like bringing me my favorite latte before I had to leave for my morning classes at the middle school where I taught, and those thoughts would just fade away. His family seemed to like me. At first, his mom, Helen, was always inviting us over for Sunday dinner. She'd try to teach me her family recipes, which, between us, weren't that great. But I'd smile and nod and pretend they were the most delicious things I'd ever tasted. She'd share these stories about Sam as a little boy, and I'd see that same goofy, crooked smile in all his childhood photos. I really thought we had it all figured out. Sure, we weren't the perfect, glossy couple you saw on social media, but we were real. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. If I had known then how it would all fall apart, well, maybe I would have done things differently. Or maybe not. That's the thing about looking back. You never really know, do you? The shift was subtle at first. A slow change in the atmosphere of our little apartment. It started about a year into our marriage. Sam was up for a promotion at work. Route supervisor. It was a big deal for him. And suddenly, he was all about securing our future and building good habits. Which is fine. I get it. But does that mean we have to track every single dollar? He'd see a charge from a department store on our joint statement and he'd start asking questions. Not in an angry way. That was the worst part. He'd ask in his calm, reasonable voice, like he was some kind of financial investigator. Hey, honey, what was this $75 at Westfield for? It was exhausting. And I'll be honest, it stung. Seeing my teacher friends post about their weekend shopping sprees, their fancy brunch dates, while I had to justify buying new supplies for my classroom. Sam didn't get it. He didn't understand that as a teacher, appearances matter. You can't wear the same cardigan twice in 1 week. The kids notice, and they can be brutal. So, yeah, I kept a few things off the shared credit card. I started putting some purchases on my personal card again. The one I'd told him I'd paid off and cut up. It wasn't lying, exactly. It was more like maintaining my independence. That's how I framed it in my mind. Then Leo arrived. He was the new PE teacher at Westwood Middle School. And he was everything Sam wasn't. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and the kind of easy confidence that seemed to radiate off him. He wore designer sportswear that probably cost more than our weekly grocery budget, and he always smelled faintly of expensive cologne, not the cheap deodorant Sam used. He noticed me right away. Chloe, right? He'd said in the staff room one morning, his smile bright and perfectly straight. I've seen your classroom displays. You've got a real creative spark. No one had said anything like that to me in years. Sam would say my displays were nice. Leo said I had a spark. The comparison started then. A little trickle at first, then a flood. Sam would come home from his route, tired and smelling of rain and exhaust fumes. Leo would walk past my classroom after school, fresh from the gym, all energy and ambition. He talked about stocks, about investments, about the trip to Thailand he was planning for the summer. Sam talked about Mrs. Higgins' prize-winning roses on Elm Street. Leo started making a point of talking to me. He'd ask my opinion on things. He'd laugh at my jokes. He complimented a new haircut that Sam hadn't even seemed to notice. A woman with your style, your intelligence? What are you doing in a sleepy town like this? He asked me one afternoon as we were walking to the car park. My husband's job is here, I said, the words feeling flat and heavy in my mouth. Ah, he said, and the way he said it, it was filled with a world of meaning. It said, he's holding you back. It said, you deserve more. It was exactly what I had been secretly thinking. His family didn't help either. Especially his sister, Sarah. She's an accountant, so she thinks she knows everything about money. At family dinners, she'd make these little comments, disguised as helpful advice. Oh, have you guys started that emergency fund yet? Or, I saw a great seminar on mortgage rates, you too should check out. It felt like an interrogation. Like she was judging me. I started making excuses to skip those dinners. I had papers to grade. After school meetings. Sam knew I was lying sometimes. I could see it in his eyes. He wouldn't call me out on it directly, but he'd get this look on his face. This disappointed half smile that honestly made me feel worse than if he'd just yelled at me. One Friday, after a particularly draining week, Leo caught me on my way out. Tough one? He asked, leaning against the doorframe of my classroom. You have no idea, I sighed. You look like you need a drink. A real one. Not the cheap wine they serve at faculty parties. Let me buy you a cocktail. Just one. As a fellow survivor of Westwood Middle. He winked. I hesitated. Just for a second. I thought of Sam, probably already at home, expecting me to help him make dinner. I thought of his quiet, predictable evening. Then I thought of a sleek, downtown bar, a sophisticated cocktail, a conversation with someone who thought I had a spark. Okay, I said, my heart giving a little flutter of rebellion. Just one. It wasn't just one. And it wasn't just that one time. It was the beginning of the cracks turning into a chasm. That first drink with Leo turned into 2, then 3. We talked for hours. He told me about his ambitions, his dream of opening his own high-end fitness studio. He listened, really listened. When I talked about my frustrations with my job, with my life, he made me feel seen. He made me feel exciting. That night, I got home late. The apartment was dark except for the small lamp in the living room. Sam was asleep on the sofa, a half-eaten plate of leftovers on the coffee table. He'd waited up for me. A wave of guilt washed over me, so sharp it almost made me sick. I crept into bed, the smell of Leo's cologne clinging to my clothes. The next morning, Sam asked where I'd been. Oh, a few of the teachers went out for a drink after work. It ran later than I thought, I said, the lie slipping out so easily it scared me. You should have called, Chloe. I was worried. My phone died. I lied again, looking away. That was the start of my double life. The late-night grading sessions became dinners with Leo at sleek, modern restaurants Sam would have called pretentious. The faculty meetings on weekends became long drives in Leo's sports car, exploring quaint little towns an hour away. We never talked about my husband. We never talked about his girlfriend, who I knew existed from office gossip but chose to ignore. We existed in a bubble, a fantasy world where we were two free, ambitious people connecting on a level no one else could understand. The affair wasn't just emotional. One afternoon, in his empty apartment while his girlfriend was out of town, we crossed that line. And it was intoxicating. It was everything my life with Sam wasn't. It was passionate and reckless and new. For a few hours, I wasn't Chloe, the middle school teacher married to a postman. I was someone else, someone desirable, someone alive. To keep up with this new life, I needed to look the part. Leo appreciated nice things. He noticed designer labels. So, the secret credit card became my lifeline. A new dress for a date. A new perfume. A handbag that cost more than Sam earned in a week. Each purchase was a thrill, a little act of defiance. The debt was just an abstract number on a screen. I told myself I'd handle it. Someday. At home, I built a wall between myself and Sam. I was irritable, distant. His small acts of kindness started to grate on my nerves. When he'd make me breakfast in bed, I'd think, if you only knew where I was last night. When he'd try to hug me, I'd pull away, claiming I was tired. He knew something was wrong. Of course he did. He's not an idiot. Are we okay, Chloe? He asked me one night as I was scrolling through my phone, pointedly ignoring the movie he'd put on for us. We're fine, I snapped. I'm just stressed from work. He just nodded. That sad, crooked smile on his face again. He retreated to his side of the sofa. The silence between us was deafening. My friend Jessica, the one who'd introduced me to Sam, thought Leo was a terrible idea. But my work friend, Amanda, she got it. She was divorced and dating a younger guy. She understood. Life's too short to be bored, Chloe, she'd say over lunch. You have to do what makes you happy. Sam's a nice guy, but is nice enough? Her words became my mantra. I clung to them. I wasn't a bad person. I was just a woman trying to be happy. I was a victim of a dull marriage, of a husband who couldn't keep up with me. That's the story I told myself. Over and over, I started to believe it. I was living two completely separate lives. And I honestly believed I could keep them from ever colliding. I thought I was smart enough. I thought I was in control. I was so wrong. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday evening. A completely ordinary, boring Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from a teacher planning session, which had actually been a shopping trip with Amanda, funded by another cash advance on the secret card. I walked into the apartment and knew immediately that something was wrong. The air was thick and heavy. Sam was sitting at our small kitchen table. He wasn't looking at his phone or reading the paper. He was just sitting there, staring at a stack of envelopes in front of him. White envelopes, with the telltale logos of credit card companies. My blood ran cold. What's all this? I asked, trying to sound casual as I dropped my keys on the counter. He didn't look up at me. He just slowly, deliberately, pushed one of the papers across the table. It was a statement. for a card that was supposed to be closed. The balance was printed in stark, black ink. Nearly $15,000. I tried to play it cool, to bluff my way out. Oh, those old things. I was going to tell you about them. It's complicated. I started, my voice sounding thin and weak even to my own ears. But Sam wasn't listening. He just sat there, flipping through page after page of purchases. Department stores, Amazon orders, that cute boutique downtown. It was all there. A detailed logbook of my secret life. He finally looked up at me. And his eyes, they weren't angry. That, I could have handled. I could have fought back against anger. But they weren't angry. They were just tired, defeated. The money you said you needed to help your student's family, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The one whose house had a fire? Was that for this? He tapped a charge for a weekend getaway at a spa hotel. I couldn't speak. The medical bills you said you had from your dental work, he continued, his voice cracking. Was that for this? He pointed to a single-line item for a designer handbag. Each lie I had told him came unraveled. One by one. I felt cornered, trapped. And when I feel trapped, I do what I always do. I attack. Well, maybe if you weren't so controlling with money, I wouldn't have to hide things. The words exploded out of me, loud and sharp in the quiet room. My voice was shaking with a rage born entirely of shame. Controlling? He looked genuinely stunned. Chloe, I was trying to save for our house. For our future. Our future? I laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Your future? Living in some boring suburb, counting every penny. Do you know how embarrassing it is? To have to ask my husband for permission to buy a new pair of shoes? Do you know how humiliating it is when your sister interrogates me about our finances at every family dinner? He just stared at me, his face pale. The crooked smile was gone. He just looked broken. We could have talked about it, he said quietly. We could have gone to counseling. Counseling? I scoffed. Counseling is for people with real problems, Sam. Not for couples arguing about your obsession with budgeting. In my mind, I could hear Amanda's voice. He's using money to control you, Chloe. It's financial abuse. That term had been bouncing around in my head for weeks. It felt like a shield. This isn't about budgeting, he said, his voice flat. This is about trust. You've been lying to me for months. I had to, I screamed. I was fully in victim mode now. It was the only defense I had. You pushed me to it. The argument went in circles. I yelled. I cried. I accused him of everything I could think of. Being unambitious, being cheap, of not appreciating me. He just sat there and took it, his face a mask of weary sadness. Finally, exhausted, I grabbed my car keys. I can't do this right now, I said, my voice dripping with self-pity. I need some space. I stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I just drove. I called Leo, my hands trembling. You won't believe what just happened, I sobbed into the phone. Sam went through my mail. He's accusing me of all sorts of things. He's completely lost it. Hey, calm down, Leo's smooth voice said through the speaker. He sounds like a controlling jerk. You don't need that. Why don't you come over? And I did. I drove straight to his apartment, feeling completely and utterly justified. Sam was the villain. I was the victim. Leo was my rescuer. That night, lying in Leo's bed, I felt a sense of relief. The secret was out. The fight had happened, and I had won. I had turned it all around on him. I thought the worst was over. The days after the big fight were a blur of tense silence. Sam and I moved around the apartment like ghosts. He slept on the sofa. We communicated through brief, polite text messages. I was waiting for him to apologize, to admit he had been controlling, that he had pushed me away. He never did. Instead, he was just quiet. And his quiet was more unsettling than any shouting match. That weekend was his mother's birthday dinner, one of those mandatory family things I usually tried to get out of. But this time, Sam was insistent. It's important to my mom, was all he said. I knew it was a bad idea, but a part of me, the arrogant part, thought this was my chance to prove my point. To show his family that I was the wronged party. I started drinking wine as soon as we arrived, the cheap, boxed kind his mom always served. Usually, I turned my nose up at it, but that night I needed it. I needed the liquid courage. The dinner was excruciating. The air was thick with unspoken words. His sister, Sarah, kept giving me these sideways glances. His mother tried to make cheerful conversation that fell flat. Somehow, the topic turned to us. "So, when are you two thinking about buying a house?" Sarah asked, her voice a little too innocent. I'd had 2 glasses of wine at this point, maybe 3. Before I could answer, Sam cleared his throat. "We're actually holding off for a bit," he said, looking at his plate. "We need to get our finances in order first." The way he said it, it felt like a public announcement, a judgment. My face burned with humiliation. His mother, bless her heart, tried to help. "You know, when Sam's father and I were starting out, we used this envelope system for budgeting. Maybe I could show you." That was it. That was the spark that lit the fuse. "Oh, so now everyone's an expert on our finances?" The words came out sharper, colder than I intended. I reached for the wine bottle again, but Sam's hand shot out, covering the top of my glass. "That's enough, Chloe," he said, his voice low but firm. "Sit down. Don't say something you can't take back." Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the embarrassment. Maybe it was months of lies and guilt and resentment finally boiling over. But something inside me snapped. I yanked my arm away from him and stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. The whole table fell silent. "Or what?" I spat, my voice rising. "You'll do what, exactly? Budget me to death?" I could hear my own voice getting louder, shriller, but I couldn't stop it. The words just kept coming, a torrent of poison I'd been holding back for years. "You know what? I don't even need you." I pointed a trembling finger at him. "Look at you. I could have had anyone. Anyone. But I settled. I settled for you." I turned to his mother, who was sitting there with her mouth hanging open in shock. "And your stories about him? They're not funny. He's not funny. He's just ugly." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. "Sorry," I slurred, a cruel smirk on my face. "But someone had to say it. Everyone thinks it. You think I don't see how people look at us? The postman with his crooked teeth and his sad little dad bod, and me." Sam didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't even look at me. He just stood up. He calmly picked up his keys and his wallet from the side table. He walked towards the front door. At the doorway, he paused, and without turning around, he said in a voice I had never heard before, a voice completely devoid of any emotion, any warmth, "Find your own ride home." And then he walked out. The click of the door closing echoed in the silence. His sister, Sarah, muttered something under her breath that sounded a lot like, "Finally." His mother started crying, quiet little sobs into her napkin. His father just stared at the wall, his jaw tight. I stood there, swaying slightly, the weight of what I had just done finally starting to sink through the alcoholic haze. But my stupid pride wouldn't let me take it back. "He'll come back," I announced to the silent room. "He always comes back." But even as I said the words, a cold dread coiled in my stomach. This time was different. I had crossed a line I could never, ever uncross. And everyone in that dining room knew it. I ended up calling a rideshare home. The driver kept giving me these wary looks in the rearview mirror as I alternated between leaving furious voicemails for Sam and sobbing, my mascara running down my cheeks. "Men, am I right?" I tried to joke, but he just turned up the radio. When I got to our apartment, it was dark. Empty. No Sam. No note. Nothing. "He just needs to cool off," I told myself. "He'll be back in the morning. This will all blow over, just like everything else." I was wrong. So wrong. The first few days were a blur of unanswered calls and desperate, rambling texts. I went through all the stages. I posted angry, vague statuses on Facebook about toxic in-laws. I ranted to Amanda about how Sam was manipulating the situation by giving me the silent treatment. I left tearful voicemails apologizing, only to take it all back in the next message. Then, a week later, the notification came from our bank. Sam had separated our accounts. Just like that, all the automatic payments for my secret credit cards bounced. Reality hit me like a physical slap in the face. I sat down with a calculator and put my teacher's salary up against my monthly minimum payments. The numbers didn't just not add up. They were on different planets. I tried to control the narrative on social media. I posted a long, carefully worded paragraph about growing through hardship and choosing myself. Amanda helped me phrase it just right, making it sound like I was the one who had bravely chosen to leave a negative situation. The likes and supportive comments rolled in, but they felt hollow, like eating candy when you're starving. At school, I started noticing how conversations would stop when I walked into the staff room. One day, I overheard two other teachers whispering. Can you believe what she said to him? In front of his whole family? Apparently, Sarah had been telling everyone who would listen about my little wine-fueled performance. My friends started dropping off. First, it was the couples we used to hang out with. Then, even my single friends started making excuses. I guess my stories about what happened kept changing, and they couldn't keep up. Even Amanda started acting weird after I couldn't afford our usual shopping trips anymore. The apartment felt huge and silent without him. Stupid little things would set me off. His coffee mug still in the cabinet, the worn spot on the sofa where he always Saturday, the silly magnets he'd collected from different places on his mail route. What could I even say? Sorry I called you ugly in front of your mother. Sorry I maxed out thousands of dollars in secret debt and then blamed you for being controlling. Sorry I treated your kindness like it was a character flaw. Sam's lawyer contacted me about the divorce proceedings. It was really happening. All those times I'd threatened to leave. All those times I'd said I didn't need him. I never thought he'd be the one to actually do it. The lawyer mentioned irreconcilable differences. A funny way of saying, your wife turned out to be a lying spendthrift who humiliated you in front of your entire family. Some nights, I'd lie awake and it would all become painfully clear. Everything I had accused Sam of being controlling, holding me back, not being good enough, it was all just smoke and mirrors. A story I'd invented to justify my own mess. He hadn't controlled me. He had tried to protect us. He hadn't held me back. He had tried to keep us from drowning. And that ugly man with the crooked smile? He was the only one who had ever loved me exactly as I was, flaws and all. But by the time I figured all that out, it was too late. Way too late. It's been a year now. I tell everyone I'm living my best life. That's what you're supposed to say, right? I post carefully staged photos of my tiny studio apartment, calling it my cozy sanctuary. I make TikToks about financial independence and healing from toxic relationships while eating store-brand ramen for dinner. The truth is, I'm barely keeping my head above water. Every paycheck is divided down to the penny between rent, minimum credit card payments, and groceries. I had to sell almost all of my designer bags just to make the security deposit on this place. Then, last week, something happened. I was at the discount grocery store across town, the one with the bruised fruit and the dented cans, because the prices are better, and I saw them. Sam, and a woman I'd never seen before. She was nothing like me. No designer clothes, no perfectly styled hair. She was wearing a simple sundress and sandals, and she had this genuinely happy smile. I ducked behind a tower of cereal boxes, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't stop watching. The way he looked at her, he used to look at me like that. They were laughing about something in the produce aisle, and I noticed she didn't seem to mind his crooked smile or his dad bod. In fact, the way she looked at him, it was like she couldn't believe her luck. Later that night, because I am apparently a glutton for punishment, I did some social media digging. Her name is Sophie. It turns out Sam got that root supervisor position he'd been working toward. The one I used to make fun of him for wanting because it wasn't ambitious enough. The final punch to the gut? I saw a recent photo of her. She was wearing an engagement ring. It was small, simple. It probably cost less than one of my old credit card payments. But in the photo, she was looking down at that ring like it was the Hope Diamond. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here, in my cozy sanctuary, calculating if I can afford to order a cheap pizza or if it's going to be ramen again tonight. All my posts about thriving and leveling up feel like some cosmic joke. Sam is actually doing all the things I was only pretending to do, building a real life, being genuinely happy. And the worst part? I can't even hate her. She's not some Instagram perfect trophy wife. She's just real. She appreciates him in all the ways I should have, but was too self-absorbed and insecure to see. And he's giving her the life I threw away, because I was too busy chasing some fantasy version of what I thought my life was supposed to look like. So, yeah, that's my story. The one about how I screamed, "I don't even need you," at the only person who ever truly did. The one about how I threw away a good man because I was too busy playing pretend to recognize what was real. Would I take it all back if I could? Maybe. Probably. But that's not how life works, is it? Sometimes you don't realize what you had until you're sitting alone, eating instant noodles in a tiny apartment, watching the person you destroyed build a beautiful life with someone who knows his worth, crooked smile and all.